The first day drive. Alana Rivers walked into Brookdale High. The crisp morning air clung to her blazer like a silent promise. The sky was still the hazy pink of dawn, but already students were trickling across the courtyard, buzzing with the thrill of a new school year and the rumors that had been circulating since the board announced her appointment. A new director was coming, not only the youngest in the district's history, but also the first black woman to ever hold the position. That fact alone had stirred curiosity, admiration, resentment, and an undercurrent of tension that Alana felt the moment she stepped out of her car. She stood for a moment, looking up at the building. Brookdale's main entrance was framed by columns that had been white once but now dulled to a tired gray, like the school itself, strong bones but years of neglect dragging at its spirit. She wasn't intimidated. If anything, she felt a spark of determination flicker in her chest. This was what she'd signed up for. A challenge. A chance to rebuild, not just walls and programs, but expectations and dignity. As she walked in, teachers turned their heads discreetly. Some smiled warmly, others stiffened, their eyes scanning her expression as if trying to determine what kind of leader she would be. She greeted each person with a nod, absorbing their reactions without letting any of them alter her calm. She'd learned long ago that being the first at anything meant walking into rooms where people wondered whether you belonged. She had stopped answering that question with words. Now, she answered it by simply existing, by showing up with her shoulders back and her purpose steady. The hallways buzzed with whispers. That's her. She looks so young. She doesn't seem strict. Do you think she'll actually change anything? Alana let the noise pass through her like a breeze. Students' judgments didn't intimidate her. They were predictable, almost tender in their honesty. Kids didn't hide their curiosity the way adults did. But then the noise shifted. Lower tones, harsher edges. That's Trent, someone whispered. She didn't need to look to know who they meant. She'd read his file. Disciplinary infractions like a grocery list, fights, vandalism, disruption, disrespect. But files never told the whole story. They noted his actions, not the reasons behind them. She believed reasons mattered. She believed people mattered, even the ones who made themselves difficult to believe in. Trent Mallard leaned against the lockers like he owned the space around him. Tall, athletic, broad-shouldered, and radiating that reckless confidence boys cultivated when no one set limits around them. A small pack of friends hovered near him, smirking as if they were waiting for the moment he'd make trouble. And he didn't disappoint. As Alana approached, the hallway parted slightly, students shifting aside instinctively, as though clearing a path might shield them from whatever tension was about to spark. She moved through the center of the corridor with steady steps, her heels tapping quietly on the floor. She wasn't afraid of adolescent theatrics. She'd handled far worse than hallway bullies. But Trent watched her with a slow, evaluating stare, like he was trying to decide whether she was worthy of his attention or simply another authority figure he could break. His arms were crossed, his jaw tilted upward in that classic teenage challenge, and for a split second Alana saw not a boy, but someone who desperately needed boundaries he could trust. The moment she passed him, he shifted his foot deliberately into her path. She saw it. The whole hallway saw it. The sharp intake of breath rippled from student to student like a wave. They were expecting the thud of her fall, expecting her humiliation, expecting Trent to grin triumphantly as he reclaimed his throne in the kingdom of adolescent chaos. But Alana didn't fall. Years of experience navigating hostile rooms and dismissive board members had given her instincts sharper than reflexes. She shifted her weight and paused mid-stride, so smoothly it looked choreographed. Her eyes lifted, cool and unshaken, and locked onto Trent's with a steadiness that made him blink. The hallway went silent, truly silent. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights seemed to quiet in anticipation. "That's the best you've got?" she asked softly. Her tone wasn't mocking. It wasn't angry. It was calm, almost bored, like she was evaluating his attempt the way she might evaluate a poorly written report. And that, more than yelling or threatening, threw him off balance. Trent straightened from the locker, a storm of confusion crossing his face. No adult had ever spoken to him that way, not dismissive, not intimidated, not hostile. Just, unimpressed. "You think you run this place," he muttered, his voice low enough that only those near him could hear. Alana stepped closer, not aggressively, but with a quiet authority that made even his friends shrink back. "I think," she said slowly, "that you've been allowed to believe you're something much smaller than you really are." He frowned, thrown, and the truth, she studied him, not with judgment, but with a piercing clarity that made him feel uncomfortably seen. "You're capable of 100 times more than a childish hallway stunt." Murmurs flickered through the students. No one had dared speak to Trent like that. Teachers usually tiptoed around him or barked orders he ignored. But Alana spoke to him like he wasn't a threat or a lost cause, like he was a possibility. You want attention, she continued, her voice still calm. Earn it. You want respect. Show it. But attacking someone for simply walking by, she tilted her head. That's not strength. That's fear pretending to be strength. For the first time, Trent didn't have a smirk ready. His jaw clenched, but something behind his eyes wavered. Annoyance, yes, but also an uneasy recognition that she wasn't wrong. Students stared at him, waiting for a comeback, a shove, a sneer. He had none. Alana held his gaze for 1 second more, giving him the chance to choose what kind of person he wanted to be in that moment. When he didn't move, she stepped past him and continued walking, her pace never faltering. Behind her, the hallway remained eerily quiet. Whispers didn't restart, laughter didn't resume. Trent stood frozen, unsure whether he'd been challenged, humiliated, or understood. And as Alana turned the corner, one thought flickered through the halls like electricity. Brookdale High had just met someone it couldn't intimidate. And Trent Mallard had just met someone he couldn't scare. Trent arrived at school the next morning carrying a kind of storm inside him. Sleep had been impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, drive. River's voice replayed in his mind, not shouting, not scolding, not even angry. Just calmly dismantling everything he used to believe about himself. Her words had scraped at something he'd buried deep, something he had spent years covering with bravado and cruelty. It irritated him. It confused him more. By the time his mom left for her early morning shift, Trent was already pacing by the window like a restless animal. He told himself he didn't care what the new director thought. He told himself she had embarrassed him. He told himself he needed to put her in her place before the entire school took her side. But underneath all of that noise was something he refused to name, a feeling like someone had finally looked at him instead of through him. When he walked into the courtyard, the morning sun was bright enough to make everyone squint. Students lounged on benches or hovered in groups before the bell. A few glanced at him, then quickly looked away. Word had spread about yesterday's hallway moment. Students expected a reaction. Trent had a reputation for never letting a challenge go unanswered. And today, he was ready to prove that the new director didn't control him. He spotted Drive, Rivers near the construction area, an open space behind the gym where the school planned to eventually build a community center, though the project had stalled for months. She was reviewing thick folders of planning documents, talking with a maintenance worker and scribbling precise notes. She looked composed, too composed, as though yesterday's confrontation had been nothing more than a brief conversation. Trent bristled. He wanted a reaction from her. He wanted her to feel something, anger, fear, annoyance, anything that would prove she wasn't as unshakable as she seemed. He stepped forward, shoulders squared, purpose burning hot and reckless. Without warning, he grabbed the folder from her hands. Several students gasped. A few phones lifted in instinctive readiness. Even the maintenance worker stepped back, startled. Trent didn't hesitate. He hurled the folder into a murky rain puddle near the curb. Pages splashed, soaking instantly, the water smearing ink and curling edges. Someone whispered, "Oh, he's done." Another murmured, "She's gonna tear him apart." But Drive, Rivers didn't shout. She didn't rush to retrieve the papers. She simply looked at Trent with the same unshaken calm she had shown yesterday, though her eyes held something different now, disappointment, maybe, or a deeper kind of sadness. Slowly, she walked to the puddle, crouched, and lifted the dripping folder. She tapped the wet papers lightly against her palm, almost ceremonially, then met Trent's eyes. "Follow me," she said gently. Her voice wasn't a command. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. Trent barked a humorless laugh. Yeah, right, but she didn't try to convince him. She didn't argue. She simply turned and walked toward the main building. That was the moment everyone noticed something unusual. Trent hesitated. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched, and then, as if some invisible pull dragged him forward, he followed her. Students stared, stunned. The boy who never listened to anyone was trailing behind the new director like a kid caught sneaking out after curfew. Inside her office, sunlight filtered through tall windows onto neatly arranged stacks of books, framed student essays, and a potted plant that looked far too alive for a school setting. Dr. Rivers set the ruined folder on her desk, took a slow breath, and sat down. Trent remained standing, arms crossed, chin up, every muscle taut with defiance. "Sit," she said softly. He didn't want to. He wanted to stay in control, stand above her, hold on to the power he understood. But something in her voice, steadfast yet warm, made him obey despite himself. He dropped into the chair with a huff. "I'm not suspending you, drive," Rivers said. His eyebrows shot up. That wasn't what he expected. "I'm not calling your mother, either." He frowned. "Then what? You gonna lecture me? Tell me how awful I am." "No," she said. "I'm going to ask you something." He shifted in the chair, uncomfortable. "Trent, why are you so angry?" The question hit him like a punch. No adult had ever asked him that. They told him he was angry, sure. They told him he had a bad attitude, bad habits, bad friends. But no one had ever asked why. He scoffed, forcing his expression back into smug indifference. "You don't know anything about me." "No," she agreed, "but I can see you. And I can see, when someone is fighting a battle that has nothing to do with the people they lash out at." His jaw twitched. "When someone tries to hurt others," she continued, "it's usually because they were hurt first. Sometimes a long time ago." Silence settled like thick fog. Trent stared at the floor. The urge to run, to slam the door, to lash out, anything, hit him hard. But he didn't move. "My dad left," he muttered suddenly, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "Years ago. My mom works nights. I don't see her. Nobody cares what I do." The confession made his throat tighten. He hadn't meant to say it. He definitely hadn't meant to say it to her. "Doctor." Rivers' expression softened, not pitying, not superior. "Just, understanding. You care," she said gently. "Or you wouldn't be this angry." A crack formed in his mask. A fracture. He wiped his nose with his sleeve, embarrassed. "And here's what I'm going to do," she said, leaning forward. "Not punish you. Not shame you. I'm going to give you responsibility." He blinked. "What? Why?" "Because you need a place to put your strength. And because leadership isn't about standing above people, it's about lifting something with them." He stared at her like she was speaking a different language. "You're going to help rebuild the community center," she explained. "The one whose plans you threw in the mud. You'll work with staff, with students, with volunteers. You'll report directly to me." Trent's heart pounded. He didn't understand any of this. It made no sense. Why trust him? Why would you give me that chance? He whispered. "Because someone should have," she answered. "A long time ago." The weight of her words pressed into him, unexpected and overwhelming. He left her office feeling strange, lighter and heavier at the same time. Confused, seen, uncertain. Word spread through the school like wildfire. The director hadn't punished him, she'd chosen him. And for the first time in his life, Trent Mallard began to wonder if he was capable of being more than what he'd been. By the end of the week, the school watched in shock as the notorious bully hauled equipment, organized sign-up sheets, directed volunteers, and listened, actually listened, to Dr. Rivers' guidance. The school was silent not because they feared him, but because they were witnessing a transformation they never believed possible. Dr. Rivers hadn't stopped him with power. She stopped him with belief, and belief, it turned out, was louder than fear.